Hello, and welcome to Epic Documentary Hub, where untold stories come alive. Imagine a world before skyscrapers, electricity, or modern nations, when one of history's greatest civilizations began beside a river cutting through endless desert. Thousands of years ago, while much of humanity struggled to survive, a miracle called the Nile transformed barren land into fertile soil, allowing small farming villages to grow where almost nothing else could survive. Every year, the river flooded the land, leaving rich black earth that turned impossible desert into opportunity. Families settled near the water, crops flourished, animals multiplied, and communities slowly expanded into organized societies. But Egypt was not yet the mighty kingdom remembered today. The land remained divided into two powerful regions known as Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north, each ruled by leaders hungry for dominance. Rivalries grew, tensions rose, and for years power remained uncertain. Then everything changed. Around 3100 BCE, a powerful ruler believed to be King Narmer united both kingdoms under one crown, creating the foundation of ancient Egypt. For the first time, the people shared one ruler, one government, and one identity. This was the birth of the Pharaohs, leaders worshipped not simply as kings but as divine protectors chosen by the gods themselves. To ordinary people, the Pharaoh controlled the balance between chaos and order, life and death, prosperity and disaster. Villages soon transformed into cities, trade routes expanded across deserts and seas, and scribes developed one of the earliest writing systems known to humanity. Massive temples slowly rose from the earth, priests gained influence, and stories about powerful gods shaped everyday life. Yet even in those early moments, no one could have imagined that Egypt would someday build giant pyramids, command armies, and create monuments so extraordinary that thousands of years later people would still stand before them amazed, wondering how greatness was possible. Egypt would endure. As Egypt grew stronger after unification, power no longer belonged only to warriors or local rulers. A new figure stood above everyone else, the Pharaoh, believed to be a living bridge between humans and the gods. To ordinary Egyptians, the Pharaoh was not simply a king wearing gold and jewels. He was considered chosen by divine forces to protect balance, control floods, defeat enemies, and ensure crops continued to grow beside the Nile. With one ruler commanding the land, Egypt entered an age of organization unlike anything seen before. Workers built canals to move water across dry land, farmers paid taxes through grain, and scribes carefully recorded every law, trade agreement, and royal order using symbols known as hieroglyphs. Huge cities slowly expanded as temples honored powerful gods connected to the sky, death, the sun, and the river itself. But power also brought ambition. Pharaohs wanted to prove their greatness, and one way to do that was by building monuments that would survive forever. Tombs became larger, richer, and more complex because Egyptians believed death was not the end but the beginning of another journey. Kings prepared for the afterlife by filling burial places with treasures, food, statues, and symbols of protection. During this time, Egypt's rulers expanded influence across nearby lands, bringing wealth through trade and military strength. Gold, precious stones, exotic animals, and rare goods entered the kingdom, making Egypt richer than many neighboring regions. Yet beneath the growing power stood one dangerous truth: every pharaoh believed his legacy had to be greater than the last. That hunger for immortality would soon lead to some of the most unbelievable structures ever created by human hands, monuments so enormous that even today they continue to confuse historians and inspire millions around the world. Soon, giant stone projects would begin rising from the desert, proving Egypt was no longer surviving, it was preparing to rule. Truly. As Egypt entered the Old Kingdom, the ambitions of its rulers grew larger than anything the world had ever seen. Pharaohs no longer wanted simple graves hidden beneath the sand. They believed death was only the beginning of another life and wanted monuments powerful enough to carry their names into eternity. Along the banks of the Nile, Egypt had become wealthy through farming, trade, and careful organization. Workers, builders, and skilled craftsmen were gathered from across the kingdom to begin projects so enormous that future generations would struggle to believe they were created by human hands. Around 2600 BCE, the dream of everlasting greatness turned into reality when Pharaoh Djoser ordered the building of the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the brilliant architect Imhotep. It became one of the first giant stone monuments in history and inspired rulers to think even bigger. Soon after, Pharaoh Khufu ordered the construction of the Great Pyramid at Giza, a structure so massive that it stood as the tallest human-made building on Earth for thousands of years. Millions of heavy stones were carefully moved and placed with astonishing precision, creating a monument that still confuses historians today. Nearby, other rulers built pyramids of their own, while giant statues and temples rose beside the desert. Contrary to myths, many historians believe thousands of workers were skilled laborers rather than slaves, living in organized communities and helping build symbols of national pride. Egypt now looked unstoppable, rich, powerful, and admired by neighboring lands. Yet beneath the glory of these breathtaking achievements, problems quietly began to grow. Powerful officials gained influence, rivalries increased, and the kingdom slowly faced pressures that even giant pyramids could not stop. Egypt was rising toward greatness, but the first shadows of future trouble had already begun to appear. Desert wind carried silent warnings. After the age of the Great Pyramids, Egypt entered a new chapter filled with power, conquest, and rulers whose names would echo through history. Although years of political struggle weakened the kingdom for a time, Egypt refused to disappear. Instead, it rose again stronger than before during a period historians call the New Kingdom. Pharaohs no longer focused only on building tombs. They wanted military victories, wealth, and control over distant lands. Armies marched across deserts and rivers, defeating rivals and bringing treasure back to Egypt. Gold, rare goods, and captured resources poured into the kingdom, making cities richer than ever before. Temples grew larger, priests became more powerful, and the authority of the pharaoh reached incredible heights. Among the most remarkable rulers was Hatshepsut, a woman who became pharaoh in a world dominated by men. Instead of endless battles, she focused on trade and economic growth, sending expeditions to distant lands and bringing exotic treasures back to Egypt. Later came Thutmose III, a fierce military leader whose victories expanded Egypt's empire across large territories, earning him a reputation as one of history's greatest warrior kings. Then Pharaoh Akhenaten shocked the kingdom by trying to replace Egypt's traditional gods with the worship of one sun deity, creating confusion and anger among priests and citizens. After him came Tutankhamun, the young king whose tomb remained hidden for centuries before revealing astonishing treasures to the modern world. During this golden age, Egypt stood powerful, feared, and respected. But hidden beneath its greatness, dangerous cracks slowly returned. Rival kingdoms watched carefully, enemies gathered strength, and political tensions quietly spread through the empire. Egypt still appeared unstoppable, yet storms were already moving closer, and the empire would soon face challenges greater than ever before. Even greatness feared time, fate, betrayal, and hidden ambition. At the height of its greatness, ancient Egypt was shaped not only by kings and armies but by faith that touched every part of life. Egyptians believed the world survived because powerful gods protected balance between order and chaos. Every sunrise over the Nile, every flood, every harvest, and every storm carried spiritual meaning. Among the most important gods was Ra, ruler of the sun, believed to travel across the sky each day before fighting darkness every night. Osiris ruled the afterlife and symbolized death and rebirth, while Isis represented protection, wisdom, and motherhood. Horus, the falcon god, became closely connected to kingship, and many pharaohs believed they ruled under his divine protection. Temples stood at the center of society where priests performed rituals, offered prayers, and guided spiritual traditions. Yet no belief fascinated Egyptians more than life after death. They believed the soul could continue forever if the body remained protected, which gave rise to the famous practice of mummification. Skilled workers carefully preserved bodies through sacred methods while families buried loved ones with food, jewelry, clothing, and objects thought useful in the next world. Egyptians believed every soul would face judgment after death, where the heart would be weighed against the feather of truth. A pure heart earned eternal peace, but failure meant destruction. Tombs were covered with paintings and symbols designed to guide spirits safely into eternity. Religion gave Egypt strength and purpose, but growing temple power slowly created tension inside the kingdom. Priests gained influence, rulers faced pressure, and enemies beyond Egypt's borders watched carefully. The empire still looked powerful, yet hidden cracks had already begun to spread through the land. Soon, battles, ambition, and political struggles would test Egypt in ways its people never expected, proving that even civilizations built on faith could not escape change. Time moved on. As Egypt reached the height of its power, peace alone could no longer protect its wealth. Neighboring kingdoms looked at the riches of the Nile with envy, and pharaohs understood that survival depended on strength. Egypt transformed into a military power, building disciplined armies equipped with bows, bronze weapons, and fast horse-drawn chariots that terrified enemies on the battlefield. During the New Kingdom, warrior kings expanded Egypt far beyond its borders, conquering lands in Nubia and pushing influence deep into the Near East. Victories brought gold, valuable goods, and tribute that made temples richer and cities stronger. Among Egypt's greatest military rulers stood Ramesses II, remembered for leading massive campaigns and building monuments that celebrated his victories. One of his most famous battles took place at Kadesh against the Hittites, a powerful rival empire. Though neither side achieved total victory, the conflict eventually led to one of history's earliest known peace treaties. Yet war brought danger as well as glory. Constant battles demanded resources, and maintaining control over distant territories became harder with time. At home, rival officials gained influence while priests became increasingly powerful. Outside Egypt, new enemies appeared, including mysterious invaders historians call the Sea Peoples, whose attacks shook kingdoms across the region. Egypt fought hard to defend itself, but pressure slowly mounted. Even mighty pharaohs could not stop time, rising costs, and growing unrest forever. Though temples still shined in the sun and rulers claimed divine power, the empire was beginning to weaken beneath the surface. Soon, Egypt would face political struggles, invasions, and painful decline, proving that even the strongest empires could not remain untouchable forever. Farmers still worked the riverbanks and priests still prayed for protection, but fear quietly spread as powerful enemies moved ever closer. Change had already begun. Even as Egypt grew older and powerful kingdoms rose and fell around it, the civilization continued to guard secrets that still confuse historians today. Among the greatest mysteries stands the Great Sphinx of Giza, the enormous stone figure with the body of a lion and the face of a ruler, watching silently over the desert for thousands of years. No one knows with complete certainty exactly why it was built or what hidden meaning it carried. Deep inside pyramids and tombs, strange passages, sealed chambers, and unexplained designs continue to spark debates among researchers. Some believe secret rooms may still remain undiscovered beneath famous monuments, waiting to reveal forgotten truths about pharaohs and ancient rituals. Another mystery surrounds the sudden disappearance of powerful rulers from records, leaving behind unanswered questions about betrayal, assassination, or political struggles hidden from history. Then there is the puzzle of hieroglyphs, Egypt's sacred writing system that remained unreadable for centuries until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone finally helped scholars unlock its meaning. Stories of curses also spread across the world after the tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered, as strange deaths and illnesses created fear that ancient spirits protected sacred places. While many experts dismiss these claims as coincidence, the fascination never disappeared. Hidden treasures, lost tombs, unexplained engineering, and unanswered questions continue to attract explorers, historians, and dreamers from across the world. Yet even while Egypt's mysteries survived, the civilization itself was quietly approaching darker times. Foreign powers were growing stronger, internal struggles deepened, and the empire that once seemed eternal slowly moved toward one of history's most dramatic declines. Soon, Egypt would face invasions, political chaos, and the painful reality that even greatness cannot last forever. The end comes. After centuries of greatness, Egypt slowly began to lose the strength that once made it feared across the ancient world. The empire that had built pyramids, commanded armies, and ruled distant lands now faced problems growing both inside and outside its borders. Powerful pharaohs became weaker, political struggles increased, and rival officials fought for influence. Maintaining giant temples, armies, and distant territories demanded enormous wealth, placing pressure on the kingdom. At the same time, foreign enemies grew stronger and watched Egypt closely, waiting for signs of weakness. Invasions became more common as powerful groups challenged Egypt's control. The Assyrians attacked with brutal force, later followed by the Persians who eventually conquered the land. Though Egyptians resisted, their independence became harder to protect. Even when local rulers briefly regained power, the kingdom never fully returned to the greatness of earlier centuries. Then came a dramatic turning point when the armies of Alexander the Great entered Egypt in 332 BCE. Instead of destroying the kingdom, he was welcomed as a liberator after Persian rule. Following his death, Egypt came under Greek leadership through the Ptolemaic dynasty, blending Egyptian traditions with Greek culture. Magnificent cities grew, trade expanded, and learning flourished, yet the old spirit of Egypt continued to fade. Political conflicts, economic pressure, and struggles for control weakened the kingdom further. While temples still stood and ancient beliefs survived, Egypt was no longer the unstoppable empire it once had been. The land that once shaped history now stood vulnerable to even greater change. Soon, one final ruler would rise and fight desperately to save Egypt from complete collapse, but destiny was already moving toward an ending that could not be escaped. History prepared for its final chapter. Fate waited silently nearby. As Egypt entered its final chapter, one ruler emerged whose name would become legendary across history, Cleopatra VII Philopator. Intelligent, ambitious, and determined, Cleopatra inherited a kingdom already weakened by political struggles, economic problems, and growing foreign influence. Unlike many rulers before her, she understood that survival no longer depended only on armies or gold. Egypt's future now rested on dangerous alliances and political strategy. At the time, the rising power of Rome threatened kingdoms across the Mediterranean, and Cleopatra knew Egypt could not survive alone. She formed an alliance with the Roman leader Julius Caesar, strengthening her position and helping secure her rule. After Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra later aligned herself with the powerful Roman commander Mark Antony. Together, they dreamed of protecting Egypt's independence while building influence against growing rivals in Rome. But their alliance created powerful enemies, especially Octavian, the future Roman emperor later known as Augustus. Tension soon exploded into war. In 31 BCE, the decisive Battle of Actium changed everything as the forces of Antony and Cleopatra suffered defeat. With Rome closing in and hope fading, their dreams collapsed. Antony died, and soon after, Cleopatra's life also came to an end, surrounded by stories, mystery, and legends that continue to fascinate historians today. Her death marked far more than the loss of a queen. It symbolized the end of ancient Egypt as an independent civilization. In 30 BCE, Egypt officially became part of the Roman Empire, ending thousands of years of rule by pharaohs. The kingdom that once built pyramids, worshipped gods, and inspired the ancient world had finally reached its dramatic conclusion. Yet its story would never truly disappear from memory. Forever remembered. Although ancient Egypt officially ended as an independent kingdom in 30 BCE, its story never truly disappeared. The empire that once ruled the Nile, built towering pyramids, and inspired fear across distant lands slowly changed under Roman control. Pharaohs vanished, royal bloodlines faded, and temples that had echoed with prayers to ancient gods lost power. Yet Egypt refused to disappear. Across endless deserts, pyramids continued standing against storms, heat, and time itself, becoming silent reminders of a civilization that once believed greatness could last forever. Statues still watched over ruins, hidden tombs protected secrets, and legends continued spreading across generations. As centuries passed, drifting sand buried cities, names were forgotten, and myths replaced truth. Then explorers and historians returned, uncovering carvings, treasures, and stories hidden beneath the desert. The discovery of royal tombs amazed the world and revealed extraordinary details about kings, queens, religion, science, and everyday life. Scholars studied Egypt's achievements in engineering, medicine, writing, astronomy, farming, and architecture, shocked that people living thousands of years ago had created wonders still standing today. Travelers crossed oceans to witness the pyramids and wonder how ancient builders moved giant stones with astonishing precision. Egypt became more than a lost civilization. It became a symbol of mystery, ambition, survival, and imagination. From the rise beside the Nile to the final days of Cleopatra VII Philopator, Egypt experienced glory, betrayal, conquest, and collapse unlike almost any kingdom in history. Though empires disappeared and rulers turned to dust, Egypt survived through stories, monuments, discoveries, and unanswered questions. Perhaps that became ancient Egypt's greatest victory, not surviving forever as a kingdom, but surviving forever in human memory, where curiosity about its secrets still lives today. Thanks for watching Epic Documentary Hub. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more powerful documentaries. See you in the next one.